All right, Alexander, let's answer the questions from the live stream we did with Gonzalo. And let's just get into it. We have a lot of questions. So David S., thank you for that super sticker. Zionic, thank you for that super sticker. MB, thank you for that super sticker. Zuxi, thank you for that super sticker. Welcome, Madril, to the Duran community. And welcome veteran support to the Duran community. And from Eurogabor, Orban wants 5 years plus billions to support a ban. What do you think how the EU will look like 5 years from now, given the present challenges the EU faces? Which leader will be around 5 years from now?
Well, probably Orban, actually, because he's the only one, it seems to me, that is generally popular. I mean, look at the election results. He won a landslide victory. Which European leader amongst the present crowd could be guaranteed a landslide victory? I mean, all right, Macron got 58% against Le Pen, but everybody accepts that this victory he got was hollow. Now, on the oil ban, the latest word is that the EU Commission is finally coming round to dropping the whole idea. Because not just because of opposition from Hungary, but because there's just too much opposition from Central European states. This has apparently provoked a furious response from the hardliners, from Poland especially, and they're threatening to sanctions, to veto the entire sanctions package if the oil ban is dropped from it. But we'll see what happens.
From Eurogabor as well, heydays of protests are done in a few months in the EU. Folks have to think twice throwing tomato to Macron and egg to Baerbock. Due to the embargo and inflation, the Molotov cocktail will be out as an option.
It's so true enough. I mean, you need petrol for a Molotov cocktail. So where are you going to get it? But let me say straight away, I am somebody who abhors political violence. I don't support it at all. I think it's something that I find extremely disturbing. But my own view, and I think this is the point you're making, is that avenues for peaceful, legal protest are becoming more circumscribed all the time. And given the mood in much of Europe at the moment, a pressure cooker effect is now starting to appear. So the fact that you've already seen, people throwing tomatoes at apparently Baerbock, I didn't see it, but anything, things of this kind, well, that may be a sign just of things, the shape that things may take. We'll see.
Zuxuxi says, good day to all. Simo Bothell says, keep it up. Simo Bothell, Missouri. Johnston Blakely says, good work. Great work, gentlemen. And Alan Shepard says, I watched the victory parade, seeing the general make the sign of the cross. It says a lot. God bless Russia. You won't dare to do this in the West.
Absolutely true. You're completely right. It is an enormously important move when the general, who is Sergei Shoigu, the defense minister, did it for the first time, which was some years ago. It created a massive stir across Russia, and everybody was talking about it. And now, of course, it's become a routine. It's become a part of the ceremonies, and it does tell you a huge amount. By the way, and just for the record, even the Communist Party in Russia now supports it. The Communist Party in Russia, I mean, it's debatable how actually communist it really is. But the Communist Party in Russia is now Christian. I mean, try and make sense of that.
Sparky says Putin is an anti-globalist hero.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that. Sparky. Jay Rillo says, is Russia economically prepared for this war a year beforehand? Why didn't they withdraw, liquidate all foreign assets and currency? Gonzalo's new Telegram channel.
Yeah, I think that the answer is that there are the Russian government is an enormous, sprawling thing. There are people who work in one direction, and I'm afraid there are other people who work in a completely different direction. So you have people in the economics and industry ministries and in the agricultural ministries who are working incredibly hard to make Russia as self-sufficient as possible, to pursue import substitution programs, all those sort of things, and very successful they were. And you have a entirely different group of people in the central bank and in the finance ministry who want to stick to the IMF orthodoxies, if you like, who say to themselves, well, we're never going to get our central bank reserves stolen or frozen because that would be a breach of sovereign immunity, and even the United States wouldn't dare to do a thing like that. And now they've been found out, and they've been hugely embarrassed. I have to quickly say it was a huge mistake. They've been massively criticized for it. But the central bank chair, Lira, has played the leading role in responding, in Russia's response to the sanctions war. And I think anybody looking at the situation in Russia today would have to say she's done an outstanding job. I mean, the ruble is strong and stable, and inflation has now fallen. The weekly rate of inflation has fallen to roughly the kind of rate that it used to have before the war began.
Tyler Durden, thank you for that super chat. Bauke says, did you guys see Garland Nixon's tweet about the phase 1 and phase 2?
I certainly did. I think it's incredibly interesting. Can I just say, for those who haven't, Garland Nixon, who I believe, by the way, is following our program, and if you are, welcome to our live streams, Garland. But Garland Nixon said that there are people in the White House who are saying that phase 1, the destruction of the European economy, of Germany, of forcing its deindustrialization, has been successfully achieved. That's phase 1. And now they want to move on to phase 2. So I would love to know who these people are. I'm sure that there are people in some sections of the US who think like that. And not just the US, by the way, but in Europe too. But it does strongly suggest that a part of this policy, part of this program, all along has been the deindustrialization of Europe and of Germany in particular.
Sanjava says, how the Western media and intelligentsia has misunderstood Russia is evident from how the Western media, YT, independent and mainstream media, prop up Alexander Dugin as the philosopher advising Putin and the Russian state.
You are so right.
Part 2 says Alexander Dugin was expelled from the Moscow State University way back in the early 2000s as he is so fringe in Russian academia. Kremlin has repeatedly stated that Putin has never met Dugin, but the West believes Dugin equals Russia.
You're completely right on every point. You're so right. They don't know tiddly squat about Russia. Their entire sanctions program that was unveiled back in February was based very much on the premise that Russia is, the gas station masquerading as a country. To their horror, they discover it's a lot more than that. And they don't understand Russian decision making, the Russian political system, Dugin's role, which, as you say correctly, is ephemeral. They know tiddly squat about Russia. And that's why they're making mistake after mistake, miscalculation after miscalculation. They don't understand how the Russians think. They don't understand how the Russians fight. They don't understand how the Russians organize their economy or how the Russians conduct their diplomacy. But, so much to say here. I've got lots of questions to answer. Maybe this is a topic we can return to in a discrete program.
Gregory Casey says, how long before ordinary workers and people across Europe rise up and revolt against and overthrow EU Commission and the national government? In my view, people are sound asleep and utterly propagandized.
I'm afraid I agree with you. At the moment, I had a long email exchange with my brother in Greece. And Greece, is right at one of the most vulnerable countries, and people are having terrible time in Greece. And my brother described the mood in Greece, which is despair combined with fatalism. It's not as if they think that there's anything they can do. They at the moment they're just rolling over or dropping over. But coming out, protesting, doing the kind of things that used to happen in Greece. The fight's been knocked out of them.
Valias, thank you for that super chat. VFTs says, have a beer, lads. Thanks for your hard work. Summer of 1970, thank you for that super sticker. Zariel says, Der Baerbock, the name physically hurts, insults me.
I agree with that. I mean, I have to
Thank you,
say,
Zari.
I thank you, Zariel.
Thank you, Zariel, for that. Lloyd Tackwell says Pelosi quoted the Book of Matthew on the House to justify sending $40 billion to Ukraine when Marjorie Taylor Greene is the only one making sense in clown world.
No, well, indeed, I must admit, I found the quotation, the citing Matthew was one of the most grotesque, one of the most ridiculous, one of the most, I thought, offensive things I've ever come across. I mean, I was speechless when I heard and saw it. And all I will say is, though, I shouldn't have been, because from Pelosi you could expect anything.
Boomer50 says, my morning addiction just listened to Larry C. Johnson yesterday. He would be a great addition to your powerhouse of brilliance.
He would indeed. And again, it's another person that one day we would love to have. The only thing, as I said again, is please understand that we have to get into a position where we can call these sort of guests. At the moment, we're working on all of those things. We have a list of people. We're, preparing for it, and Larry Johnson is certainly one of them.
Mr. K. Khan says, keep up the good work. Catherine Smith says, Alexander, that's the closest I've gotten to seeing your sweets doggos. Thank you, Catherine. E82 says, Britain citizen Mazi Namdi Kanu was kidnapped, abused in Kenya, and sent to Nigeria. Britain has yet to say a word, 1 year now. Freedom for Biafra.
Yeah, Biafra, yeah. Biafra, just very quickly for people to know, is a region in southern Nigeria which attempted to achieve independence from Nigeria in the 1960s. There was a ferocious civil war in which the British government backed the Nigerian government against Biafra, and there was a humanitarian catastrophe there.
Beer and Flies, thank you for that super sticker. And Sancho Relaxo says, someone show Alexander how to lengthen the screensaver timeout so that he doesn't have to jiggle the mouse all the time.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Sancho Relaxo. Kelsey, thank you for that super chat. Gassan, thank you for that super chat. Horse and Carte Blanche says, a lot of friends ask for an all-in-one video about this conflict. Any thoughts on making a single video that runs through the main history of this conflict plus the events since the invasion? Thanks for your diligence.
We have actually been discussing this. There's been discussions about this. I think one video to do that would be a huge program. I mean, it would be an enormously long video. But, we have been debating how we might do that. And, we'll see.
Lil Storm, thank you for that super chat. Zugzuxi says, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. Thank you very much for that. Gus Antunez says, Gazprom has stopped gas supplies through the Polish section of the Yamal-Europe pipeline.
Absolutely. Well, bear in mind, Poland is refusing to comply with gas for rubles. Up to 20 EU companies apparently have now signed up for gas for rubles. 14 more are preparing to do so it seems. But, we're seeing that the gas situation is beginning to spiral out of control, with some countries refusing to comply, demanding support from other countries, and Ukraine also making its own decisions. Not for the first time, the Europeans, through their insane economic war of attrition, now find themselves trapped in a situation they can't control.
Aji, thank you for that super sticker. Gus Antunes says, Russia introduced counter-sanctions against 30 structures of Gazprom's former daughter, Gazprom Germania, as well as Europol Gas, which owns the Polish section of the Yamal-Europe gas pipeline. There goes Germany's loophole.
Well, absolutely. And can I just say something? How arrogant of the Germans, how incompetent of Robert Habeck to think you could just seize these assets. Just seize them. He didn't pay for them. He didn't nationalize them properly. He didn't, seize them and then pay for their value, which, might have been a way forward. He just seized them. And he seems to have thought that the Russians would just sit back and let it happen. Well, now he's discovering otherwise. Habeck in my opinion, and I say this frankly, I think he's a more disastrous figure than Baerbock. He's constantly claiming that he's come up with solutions and making declarations about things which are going to happen, which are unrealistic. Like he's done a deal with Qatar for LNG, for example, that he's reduced Germany's imports of oil from Russia from 33% to 12%. Again, he's not explained how he's done that. And I don't think anybody who really drills into the figures believes it's true. And of course, he does all of these things. And he's leading Germany and Europe into a very, very bad place. And this is just another example.
Reza says, appreciate your hard work and dedication. Alex and Alexandria, the best. Thank you. Thank you very much, Reza, for that. Horse and Carte Blanche says, Alex Alexander, can you briefly elaborate on what happened to Greece in 2010?
What a huge subject. Briefly elaborate on what happened to Greece in 2010 is impossible. Briefly as we can say it, Greece joined the euro, which it should never have done, in incredibly corrupt circumstances. Corruption in which the European Union was fully implicated in, and I can say that definitely because my father, my poor father at the time, was going around the corridors in Brussels trying to explain to people, look, this isn't going to work, it can't fly, and they all pretended that they weren't listening, or at least they pretended to listen, and they paid no attention. Anyway, so Greece joined the euro, which it should never have done. This set the scene for a grotesque orgy of corruption, overspending, back scratching, you name it, in Greece. All of this on the back of the euro. The economy inflated. And don't forget, it wasn't just Greece that was inflating at that time. Pretty much every other economy was inflating. And then, of course, the financial crisis came. Greece was left with a massive amount of debt. And the European Union came in and cleaned up and closed down. They basically smashed the economy, hurt all the people who were providing actual value in the Greek economy. And, of course, all the people who were there and who'd made huge amount of money out of what had happened, they walked away, and they still got all that huge amount of money to this day. Now, that's a very, very brief summary of what happened. Alex can tell you an awful lot more. He was actually there.
All right. AZ Mary says, first there was Trump derangement syndrome. Now it is Russia, Ukraine derangement syndrome.
Yeah, true. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, AZ Mary. Eternal Optimist, thank you for that super chat. JC Adder, thank you for that super chat. Bohemian Gnostic says, the sunk cost fallacy is an escalation of commitment without an expectation of return.
Yeah, quite true. That's exactly what we're seeing with Ukraine. Quite right.
Shady Lady, thank you for that super sticker. WOTB, thank you for that super chat. Fox Drake says, please talk more about Russia, China, and the new gold silver standard. Are you Russia, China, huge reserves, replace US dollar? As an American, I'd love to return to gold.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Russians are moving towards a currency, or at least they got an expert committee working to put the ruble, to link the ruble to gold and a basket of other commodities. We don't yet know fully where the Chinese currency, which I call the RMB, by the way, will fit into all of this, but presumably at some point it will. That's the guess. And that would, it seems to me, create a genuine, viable alternative financial and currency system, which would be a major challenge to the fiat-based currencies of the West, and primarily the dollar. What influence that will have on the dollar remains to be seen. But I want to stress again, the Russian-Chinese project is still very much a work in progress, and we'll just have to wait and see how it all works out. But you're quite right, the aggregate resources that the Russians and the Chinese could in theory bring to this are huge. And that's what makes this a real possibility and a real challenge.
Damo Gerard says, to what extent could some European leaders be intentionally committing suicide by sanctions as a mechanism to break up Europe and get some sovereignty back?
I don't believe that. I mean, which European leaders? Did Draghi, Scholz, Macron? I mean, I can't see any one of them. Mark Rutte in the Netherlands. These people are all absolutely signed up to this project. I mean, Baerbock and Habeck are Euro fanatics. I mean, I don't think any of them are thinking in that kind of way.
Sparky says, smugnorance is bliss. Thank you, Sparky, for that. Jahanger says, probably the best time for a collective West summer. The West needs to experience its own medicine of regime change and fragmentation. Based on what I hear here, collective West is human value void.
I so completely agree. Can I just say again, I think you're making the absolute sound point. They have never really believed that if they, that anybody would do to them what they do to others. They assume they can sanction everybody. They never believed that they could themselves be sanctioned. They assumed that they could inflict economic destruction and mayhem on others. They're now shocked to discover that the same can be visited on themselves. And that's something that in the West we've not experienced on this scale at any time before in our history. I mean, the Arab oil embargo of 73 was a minor blip by comparison.
North Shore Girl says, thank you for all you do. Rakbas, thank you for that super sticker. Jeff Bickford, thank you for that super chat. And Jay Galt says, if the euro crashes, does that slow inflation in the US? Perhaps that's their objective.
Well, it might do. I have to say, if the euro crashes, in the short term, it would be it would strengthen the dollar, and that might also lower inflationary pressures in the US. But of course, the danger is that it would create a whole host of other problems, like perhaps a much bigger US trade deficit, which could create more problems, going forward too. The best solution for America's economic problems is not crashing the euro. It is pursuing a reindustrialization program within the United States itself. All the means to do it are there. That was what America First was supposed to be about. It never fully happened. But the means to do it are there. The United States can do it. The United States should do it. Financial warfare is not the way in the end.
De Otophilos says, USA population control through famine?
I hope not. I mean, I think that was a terrifying idea, actually.
456T123G says, these evildoers are afraid of the truth because it will reveal them for what they are, the prophet. Thank you for that super chat. Balke says, reality is the concrete quay that will stop the bobbing ship of BS.
Yeah, beautifully said. Beautifully
Thank you very much
said.
for that, Balke. Patricia says, absolutely correct that U.S. subsidies will end up in the hands of oligarchs, aristocrats who will use it to buy up farmland and properties, a plan to take us back to feudalism.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Patricia. Wayne says the Kronomorsk Varna shipping lane, Odessa to Varna, as well as the Istanbul connection, run directly abeam of Snake Island.
Yeah.
In the long term, this island will have to be in Russian hands.
Well, quite possibly. But I mean, in terms of this war, I don't think Snake Island has any strategic significance. In the longer term, it may do. And can I just say, I understand that during the Cold War, the Soviet Union operated a very powerful radar station on Snake Island. But that's, of course, been dismantled a long time ago.
Herman, thank you for that super chat. Robert, thank you for that super chat. Shelley, thank you for that super chat. Wasa Bista says the MSM keeps lying that Ukraine is winning and Putin is desperate to cover for a false flag to blame on Russia, chemical or even nuclear.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is our concern.
Garland Nixon says, keep up the good work.
Garland,
You,
it's a
Garland,
joy to have you on our programs, and a huge point of pride for us that you're following us.
Balke John says Poland will not be allowed by Russia into its war zone. Under their cover, arms and troops would come in to fight the Russians.
I think Putin actually has made that clear. I mean, I heard very carefully all the things that Gonzalo was saying about a possible Russian-Polish deal over Western Ukraine. I've seen no sign that anything like that has been agreed. And my own view about Putin's statement about 2 weeks ago about lightning strikes is that it was intended as a warning to Poland.
Meg, thank you for that super sticker. Augusto, thank you for that super chat. Jay Galt says, politically, the U.S. Air Force may have trouble justifying its existence if the Russian air defense is as good as claimed, 1.3 trillion for F-35s.
I think it is as good as claimed. And I'm going to say something. One of the big revelations for me about this war is exactly how good the Russian air defense system is. I mean, they don't seem to have much difficulty shooting down, Tochka-U ballistic missiles, for example, and even missiles, or rather shells, launched by multiple rocket launchers. So, they clearly are extremely well organized. They've also, by the way, been able to successfully defeat drone attacks. So it's clearly a very well organized air defense system, and it reflects the different investment strategies of the two great global military superpowers. The US went for ever more advanced fighter jets. The Russians went for ever more advanced air defense systems. I'm not going to try and guess at the moment who's more superior, but it clearly is a very advanced air defense system indeed.
Balke says any Polish troop concentration will be met with hypersonic missiles, just like the Yavoriv hypersonics do not allow for warning and thus Rump dispersal.
Absolutely correct. That's exactly what will happen. By the way, on the Snake Island battle, the Russians apparently launched supersonic missiles, which were used to break up the Ukrainian concentrations. So think of what hypersonic missiles might do, which are much faster.
T-Tom says Gonzalo is wrong. I see it that NATO will be engaged from Poland and Romania. All the rhetoric is going in that direction. Also, negative sentiment grows, and the only exit from recession is war.
I am afraid I lean more to your view than Gonzalo's, but we shall see. I hope Gonzalo is right, and we are wrong, by the way.
Agastao says, please comment about the drugs on the battlefield.
Yeah, I've heard lots about this, and I would say it's not the first time. I mean, by the way, the Germans did this on a huge scale during the Second World War, and it explains why the German army was able to keep advancing and fighting long after, normal soldiers would have become tired. So it doesn't surprise me, and this isn't the first time. But of course, ultimately, it's another way of burning your people out. Anyway, there's now accumulating evidence that this has happened, or rather that this is happening. That soldiers on the lines are being provided with these stimulants, and it doesn't surprise me at all, given the kind of military that Ukraine seems to operate, and given what is said to be some of the habits of some of the political leaders in Kiev.
General Zhang Mei says, no safe rooms to run to in a sustained artillery barrage. The real question should be how many woke snake flakes would wet to their beds if the West brought back conscription?
Quite true enough. There isn't going to be conscription in the West, partly for that reason. I mean, the reaction in Britain if conscription were reordered, I can tell you it would be, well, I mean, it would be huge. The opposition would be enormous. But about artillery barrages, what you say is exactly what I've heard. There is no escape from them, even in bunkers or things. I mean, the sheer volume of noise and the sheer pressure is just apparently beyond description.
Fellow Ethelward says, if scenario-wise modern Ukraine, EU, UK, US infantry clashed with modern Russia, China, India infantry forces, would the casualties be high for Russia like in World War II?
They would be enormous on both sides. I mean, let's be very clear about this. I mean, one shouldn't underestimate the technological resources available to both sides in that kind of conflict. I mean, we've already seen a lot of high technology weapons used in Ukraine, but nothing like on the scale that would happen in that kind of a war. I'm not going to predict the outcome of a war like that. I hope it never happens.
Zachary Jarvie says, Finland and Sweden join NATO. Russia retaliates with World War III.
Well, I don't think they'll retaliate with World War III, but as I said, they will certainly take military steps to counter this. And of course, they will eventually take economic steps too. Finland has made a disastrous mistake. And I really mean Finland more than Sweden. I mean, Finland came off lightly, very lightly after the Second World War, precisely because it agreed a neutrality treaty with what was then the Soviet Union. Now it's gone back on all of that, and the Russians must be saying to themselves, perhaps we treated Finland too lightly in the past. I mean, we supported Finland. Finland prospered through its neutrality, through its trade with Russia. Maybe in future, and remember, Finland's a small country, 5 million people. Maybe in future, when we're in a position to, we're going to make sure that Finland isn't going to do the same thing to us that they've just done now. In other words, betray promises that they made to remain neutral in 1948.
Balke Jean says, Gonzalo, how does that Rump Ukraine become neutral, as you say?
Very good question. I've been thinking about this, and I'm increasingly wondering whether a Rump Ukraine, like we've been talking about, is actually viable. It might be set up, and it could be a transition. But I wonder whether, if we ever get to that point, Russians control all the land east of the Dnieper. They also control the Black Sea coast. Whether this impoverished central Ukraine, Rump Ukraine around Kiev, wouldn't eventually fall into the Russian orbit as well.
G-Dog says, isn't the real game Finland? Pentagon knows their weapons don't work.
No, I don't think the real game is Finland. I think there's been an agenda to bring Finland into NATO, by the way, for a very, very long time. I think this has always been there. But I don't think it was the agenda. I don't think, this was the plan. I think, as I said, this is a rather squalid consolation prize for the eventual loss of Ukraine, dare I say it. But I don't think this is what this was all about at all. I think this is really very much about the Ukraine. And from a Russian point of view, it was entirely about Ukraine.
Reza says, gentlemen, any updates on the biolabs?
The Russians have produced a massive series of documents about this, showing that all the usual people that we've heard about, all the usual pharmaceutical companies, I'm not going to name them, are involved, all sorts of institutes in Germany, which were also involved during the coup, that they were involved too. This is a huge document dump, which I'm still working through.
General Zhang Mei says the Western Snowflake Army will be playing sunshine and lollipops in the front lines, expecting the Russians to greet them with rose petals and candy.
Well, I think there's some truth to that, by the way, but you goodness, if they do go into battle with those kind of ideas, well, let's say the battle would be very short.
Zahir, thank you for your super chat. Michael Robinson says, you guys should stop calling it a retreat. In military terms, it's called a tactical withdrawal,
Yeah.
and there are many reasons to conduct one.
Indeed, and by the way,
Michael.
despite the usual triumphalist propaganda about it, I noticed that even the British Ministry of Defence, which never misses an opportunity to criticise the Russians, ridicule the Russian war effort, praise the Ukrainian one, they admitted that it was a planned withdrawal, not a successful Ukrainian counteroffensive.
General Zhang Mi says, a Russian victory will be the end of the globalist neoliberal fascist great NWO agenda.
That's what Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, has said.
And Robert Jarava says, hopefully a Russian victory can be preceded with the arrest of Justin Castro. We in Canada can't stand him.
I can't stand him either. I hope he is arrested. I'm not sure by whom, by the way. And there are things that he's done for which I think he can be charged and stand trial for. I'm not going to predict what the outcome of that trial would be, though.
Colin Jones, thank you for that super sticker. Tim Gibson says, shout out to Swan in Finland. Thank you, Tim, for that. Robert Jarava says, the whole Ukraine operation is regrettable, but necessary. Moreover, exciting as its first public action against Khazarian mafia.
I have to say, I think that's a sentiment many people hold, including many people in Russia, including President Putin himself.
Paul, thank you for that super chat. Kyle, thank you for that super sticker. Nikias80 says, the Finnish Minister of Economic Affairs has said that if natural gas would stop, then some factories would shut down. The official stance is still that Finland will not pay in rubles.
Yeah, no, I've heard this. I understand natural gas accounts for only a relatively small part of the Finnish energy mix. But of course, that might be wrong. And it may be anyway that they need natural gas for other things, because, of course, natural gas isn't just used for energy generation.
Paul, thank you for that super chat. Honus What says, why does Schwab have so much influence over Western leaders? Can't they think for themselves?
He doesn't himself just have influence. I mean, you mustn't think of him as, kind of Blofeld figure who runs this vast, sinister organization. What gives Schwab power is that he's the convener of, if you like, a grouping which he played a big role bringing together, but which brings together many, many very powerful power brokers in Europe especially. And it's this grouping that is powerful rather than Schwab the individual. Schwab is a very articulate, clever spokesman. He puts their positions very well. He's, as I say, plays a role in bringing it together, but it's the people, it's the whole group together. Old money, as I always reiterate, it is they who are powerful, and it is they who are listened to.
GEC812 says, history further back than that. Genetic research shows that Rurik clan, leaders of the Kievan Rus, while culturally Scandinavian, had Finnish ancestry.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know.
All right, those are all the questions. Thank you very much for all of those questions. theduran.locals.com, everybody, and go to the Duran shop and get 10% off when you use the code GOODDAY.